Hello, everyone. Today, you will find a story about a meeting that will change everything. After many years of separation, fate gives a second chance. This is a story about love, loss, and hope. Don't miss new parts if you are drawn into its plot. Just click your mouse on one subscribe button so that I also understand that I am doing everything right. The most important thing is hope. Chapter 1. Ryan Caldwell sat in a rocking chair on the porch of his old, dilapidated two-story house in West Texas and sipped an iced glass of sweet tea. It was a hot, dusty day, but it always seemed to be that way in this part of the country. Still, he enjoyed the solitude and the quiet. He took another sip of tea and lit his second cigarette of the morning. He looked around and made a note of what needed to be done. Then he told himself, "Screw it," and decided that everything would be tomorrow, just like it had been yesterday and the day before, and the many other days before that. He pulled his battered Stetson over his eyes and puffed on his cigarette with relish. After all, it wasn't like anyone was coming to visit him. Besides, he hadn't bought this place to impress anyone. Quite the opposite. He didn't need visitors. He just wanted to be left alone. That's why he bought the place 3 years ago, along with the 20 acres of dirt and brush on which it sat. Sure, he could afford better. Much better. But the house had a good foundation and strong bones. The plumbing and electrical were in surprisingly good condition, and it even had phone and internet service. The roof was in reasonably good condition, and he didn't see any visible signs of rot. Besides, the house suited him just fine, and he bought the place, paying full price for it, in cash. The realtor was happy, the seller was happy to be rid of it, and he was happy to have a place he could call home, even though it was basically a piece of shit in desperate need of a paint job. His attention was suddenly drawn to a noise to his left. He turned to look and focused his one good eye on a cloud of dust at the end of the long dirt driveway. Who the hell is coming this way? He asked himself. Concerned, he grabbed the loaded 12-gauge pump-action shotgun leaning against the wall next to him and placed it in his lap. He watched as a black sedan pulled up in front of his house. When he saw the sticker on the front bumper, he realized the car was a rental. A cloud of dust kicked up over the car, and Ryan waved his hand in front of his face to keep the dirt out of his eye. The driver's side door opened, and a young man in a white polo shirt stepped out of the car. Ryan stood with his shotgun, pumping around into the chamber. The young man flinched as he looked at the tall, lanky man. A large bandage covered his left eye and partially concealed the scar that ran down the left side of his face. A dark beard covered the lower part of his face. Still, the young man knew it was Ryan Caldwell, even though his picture was more than a decade old. "Are you Ryan Caldwell?" he asked nervously. Obviously not a cop, Ryan thought. "Depends," Ryan said. "What are you, a salesman? If so, I'm not going to buy anything." "I'm not here to sell anything, sir," the man said. "Well, then you must be a Fed, in which case there's no Ryan Caldwell here," Ryan said. "I work for the government, but I'm not here on official business," the man said. "It's a family matter." "I don't have a family," Ryan said. "It concerns your daughter Sarah, sir," the young man said. "I'm telling you, I have no family," Ryan said. "My daughter died over 10 years ago." That wasn't entirely true, and Ryan knew it. He did have a daughter, but she'd been dead to him for about 12 years now, since she turned 16. "It's a matter of life and death, sir," the young man said. "You got that right, boy," Ryan said. Calling someone boy in these parts was considered an insult, and often ended up starting a fist fight. "You can either get back in the car and get out of here, or I'll leave you where you are." "Sir, please," the man pleaded, extending his arm in front of him. "Can I have 5 minutes of your time?" 5 minutes, Ryan said. He was curious to see what this young man, who certainly wasn't acting like a lawman or a Fed, wanted. "Not a second more." The young man nodded his head and took a briefcase from the car. "Please, can I come up to you?" he asked Ryan. "It's awfully hot in here." "Welcome to West Texas," Ryan said. "Come on, show me what you got." The young man hurried to the porch, and Ryan pointed him to a wooden chair. "Do you have ID?" asked Ryan. The man pulled out his wallet and showed Ryan his driver's license. Ryan read the name aloud. "Robert Green," Ryan read. "Is that really you?" The man nodded his head. Yes, sir, that's me, he said. Everyone just calls me Bob. So, Bob, Ryan said, who do you work for? The FBI? CIA? I work for the Department of Commerce, sir, Bob said. I do statistical analysis. Department of Commerce? Asked Ryan. Statistical analysis. Sounds about as exciting as watching paint dry. What does that have to do with me? Nothing, sir, Bob said. Like I said, this is your daughter. Sarah? She's my wife. He pulled out another picture and showed it to Ryan. Ryan looked at the picture and recognized his daughter in her wedding dress. Bob was standing next to her and smiling. He held the picture back out. Congratulations, Ryan said. But like I said, I don't have a family. Not anymore. So you don't care if your daughter dies? Asked Bob, clearly hurt and not understanding how a man could turn his back on his only child. Ryan looked at him for a moment before answering. She's been dead to me for over 10 years, he said. Bob nodded his head, wiped a tear from his eye, and started to get up. All right, he said, his voice filled with sadness. I'll let her and our son know. I apologize for taking up your time, sir. Wait, Ryan said. Bob sat back down and looked at the older man. What's wrong with her? Asked Ryan. She's in the hospital, Bob said. She's been diagnosed with a very rare blood disorder. The doctor said that if she doesn't get a bone marrow transplant soon, she'll be dead in 6 months. Ryan thought for a moment. His father had died of a rare blood disease years ago. As angry as he was at his daughter, he didn't like the thought of her son, his grandson, becoming an orphan. He knew what it was like to lose a parent. And you say you have a son? Asked Ryan. Bob nodded his head and pulled out another picture, handing it to Ryan. Yes, Bob said. He's 3 years old. Sarah named him Ryan after you. Ryan threw his head up in surprise. That really pissed off her mother, but Sarah didn't care. Ryan grinned. He could imagine his ex-wife's reaction to that. What about Sarah's mother? Asked Ryan. Can't she be a bone marrow donor? The doctor tested her, but she wasn't compatible enough, Bob said. Said it would give Sarah a few months at best, but no more than that. I see, Ryan said. So how did you find me? He asked. It wasn't easy, Bob says. It took me months, even with the resources of the federal government at my disposal. You're hard to find. That was the plan, Ryan said. Did you tell anyone you found me? Not yet, Bob said. I wanted to make sure I really found you before I said anything. Ryan nodded his head. It was a smart move, he said. Did Sarah tell you what happened between her mother and me? She told me some of it, Bob said. Said her mother left you for another man. Said she sided with her mother against you and you didn't take it too well. She also told me she's regretted it ever since. She tried to contact you, wrote several letters, but they all came back unopened. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of letters, handing them to Ryan. Ryan looked at the letters tied with red ribbon. Each one was stamped, "No forwarding address. Return to sender." Is her mother still married to Jake Knight? Asked Ryan. Yes, said Bob, but things aren't smooth between them. He's abusive, and we think he's cheating on her. Ryan grinned at the irony. A cheater who gets cheated on. How delicious, he thought sarcastically. Then why does she stay with him? Asked Ryan. Mostly money, Bob said. Of course, Ryan thought. That was the reason she'd left to be with him in the first place. You're probably already twitching with the urge to ask what happened between Sarah's mom and me, aren't you? Asked Ryan. I'm a little curious, Bob said. Her mother seems to think you're dead and doesn't want to talk about it at all. Ryan handed the photo back and regarded Bob for a few moments. Would you like to hear it? He asked the younger man. Yes, sir, I would, Bob said. Ryan nodded his head. This might take a little while, Ryan said. Would you like some iced tea? I'd like that very much, sir, Bob said. Ryan went to the house and returned with a clean glass. He poured some tea from a pitcher that was on an outdoor table and handed it to him. Thank you, sir, Bob said. First of all, Ryan said, call me Ryan, not sir. I don't own you. Not yet, anyway, he added with a smile. Mind if I smoke? He asked, pulling a cigarette from the pack in his pocket. Not at all, Bob said. Mind if I join you? He asked, pulling a pack out of his briefcase. Sarah doesn't like me smoking in the car. Ryan smiled. Maybe this young man was worth keeping around after all. He shook his head. Not at all, Ryan said, lighting up. He offered Bob a light and watched the young man take a deep drag on his cigarette. Let me tell you what happened. Ryan's story. Lisa and I were high school sweethearts. I played on the soccer team and she was a cheerleader. God, she looked so good. We were inseparable in those days. We were both 18, and we felt it was time. I only had 2 dreams at the time, my own garage and marrying Lisa. When we graduated high school, she went to college to get a business degree, and I went into the army. We planned to get married at the end of those first 4 years. I ended up in combat. I spent a year in Iraq and another in Afghanistan. That's when I found out I had another gift. I came back, and we got married as planned. Lisa got a job at Knight Petroleum, and I got a job fixing cars. I'd been doing it since I was a youngster and was pretty darn good at it. At Knight Petroleum, she started at the bottom of the totem pole. We weren't rich, but we lived pretty well. Sarah was born 11 months after we were married. I fell in love with this little girl as soon as I saw her. Lisa took a 3-month maternity leave and went back to work, taking little Sarah with her. The company had its own daycare center, and it saved us a lot of money. We made progress and were finally able to put a down payment on the house. It wasn't easy, but we made it through. I still dreamed of owning my own garage, so I took night classes to learn about running a business and got my ASE certification. Eventually, I became a master technician. Lisa also moved up the ranks at Knight Petroleum and eventually became personal assistant to Jake Knight, the company's wealthy CEO. That's when the out-of-town trips began. Some of them were overseas, and I spent many weekends playing Mr. Mom with Sarah. I didn't mind, though. I loved that little girl. Despite all this, I thought we had a good marriage and a good life, but I began to notice a change in Lisa's attitude. Suddenly, I didn't think I was good enough for her. By then, Sarah was in middle school. We were still close, but she was going through that rebellious phase that all teenagers go through, I think. Then one day, Lisa lowered the boom. I came home from work and noticed she hadn't come home yet. There was nothing unusual about that. I started cooking dinner, as I had been doing more and more of that lately. Finally, Lisa came home. She told Sarah to go to her room for a while and then took a glass of wine. Everything okay at work? I asked her. Is Jake giving you a hard time? She shook her head and sat down at the kitchen table. We need to talk, she said. What's wrong? I asked, sitting down. She pulled something out of her briefcase and held it out to me. What's that? I asked. Divorce papers, she said. At that point, I could have been knocked over with a feather. What? I asked. Divorce? Why? I don't want to be married to a mechanic, she said, emphasizing the word mechanic. What? I asked. Are you saying that after all these years, I'm no longer good enough for you? And then it hit me. Oh my God, I said. You fell in love with someone else, didn't you? You cheated on me. Who is he? Jacob Knight, she said calmly. And yes, we fell in love. I didn't want it to happen, but it did. And yes, we were together. You mean you've been spending good nights with him behind my back? I said. No need to be rude, she said. But yes, we've had some nice evenings. A lot of them. Nothing personal. It's just that he can give me things you never could, and you never will. Nothing personal? What do you mean? I asked. He's fucking rich, she said. He's a billionaire. He's not only rich, he's powerful. One snap of his fingers and entire governments go down the drain. And you're just a monkey. What about our future? I asked, stunned. What about Sarah? We have no future together, Lisa said coldly. And Sarah will be fine. Jake has already assigned her to a private boarding school in the Northeast. She'll be going there when we get back from the south of France in a few weeks. Does Sarah know about this? I asked, shocked. Of course, Lisa said. She's really excited about it. I'd like to hear it from her, I said. Never mind, Lisa said, and beckoned Sarah back. Is this true? I asked Sarah. Did you know what your mother was planning? Sarah lowered her eyes before answering. Yes, she said quietly. Daddy Jake already has it all set up. He said you wouldn't mind, and he promised to buy me a new car when I turned 16. Daddy Jake? I asked. Sarah nodded her head. Yes, she said. That's what my mom told me to call him. I looked at Lisa, my blood boiling. Don't worry, Lisa said. If you look, you'll see that I'm giving you unlimited dates, but I doubt you'll be able to see Sarah much, given her schedule and all. I looked at Sarah again. And you're okay with all of this? I asked her. Mommy said it's better this way, Daddy, she said. Did you know about your mother and Jake before this came to light? I asked her. She nodded her head again. Yes, she said. Mom made me promise not to say anything. I looked at Lisa again. How long have you been plotting this behind my back? I asked. About 6 months, she said. Look, Ryan, I don't want anything from you. No alimony or support. All I need are our clothes and a few things, and then we'll be gone. Sign the papers and it's done. What if I decide to fight it? I asked. That wouldn't be wise, she said. Like I said, Jake is very strong. You have no idea. He could destroy you in an instant. I looked at Sarah and Lisa. Neither of them could look me in the eye. Okay, I said. I picked up a pen and went through the divorce papers. She didn't want anything, not even her half of the house. I signed the papers and handed them back to her. Thank you, Ryan, Lisa said, taking the rings off and placing them on the table. I'm sorry it had to end this way. Just leave, I said. Now. Sarah came over to me and tried to hug me, but I brushed off her attempts. Just go away, I said. You're both dead to me. I never want to see either of you again. Sarah jumped back, tears in her eyes. Lisa looked at me, shocked. Ryan, she began. Just get the hell out, now, I yelled. Tell Jake that if he gives me any more rudeness, so help me God, I'll end him where he stands. They both left the house, and I never saw or heard from them again. After they left, I went upstairs and found that all of their belongings were gone. Apparently, Lisa had moved their stuff out while I was at work. I took a few days off and removed all traces of their presence from the house. Photos, clothes, everything they left behind was put in a barrel and burned. I wanted nothing to remind me of one of them. Without Lisa's income, paying the bills became problematic, so I sold the house and a lot of extra furniture. I rented a one-bedroom apartment and lived there for a few months. I remembered that I had seen an article about Jake and Lisa getting married after I had gotten the final divorce decree. The picture in the paper showed Lisa and Jake with a smiling Sarah next to them. According to the article, Jake planned to adopt her. That night I was sitting at the bar crying into my beer, and sitting next to me was Bill Johnson, an old army buddy I hadn't seen in years. Hey Ryan, he said. You doing okay, man? He asked. I shook my head. No, I said quietly. Saw a report about your ex getting married, he said. That sucks. Wasn't that your daughter with them? I don't have a daughter anymore, I told him. He sympathized with me a little, and we made small talk while we drank. And then he hit me with an idea. Listen, Ryan, he said. There's nothing keeping you here. Why don't you join me? I'm putting together a team for a job and I could really use your help. What to do? I asked him. Mostly private security, he said. Sort of like what we did in Afghanistan, but with a much better compensation package. I'm getting a little old for this kind of shit, I told him. He laughed and shook his head. Come on, you're as old as I am, he said. You're still in pretty good shape. It'll do you good to get away from this shithole for a while. A few weeks with me and I'll get you back in shape, no problem. I thought about it for a while. I had dreams, but that was back when I had Lisa and Sarah. Now that they were gone, I had almost nothing, not even a dog. What the hell? I said. Okay, consider me in. Thus began my 9-year career as a private security consultant, or simply put, a mercenary. I gave 2 weeks' notice, put all my belongings in storage since I wouldn't be home most of the time, and began my new life as a hired gun. All in all, it wasn't a bad life. I traveled, got paid good money for what I did best, besides fixing cars. Most of the time we counseled or trained the guys who did the actual work, but sometimes we had to get involved too. It was either that or death, My last job involved a minutes. Well, I'm not sure I can leave right now, Jake said. I have a shareholders meeting this afternoon, and I have a lot to discuss. Listen to me, you little jerk, Ryan said. I have business with you, and I want to meet with you right now. Where? Asked Jake. In the alley between 3rd and 4th near Riverside, Jake said. Do you know the neighborhood? Yeah, I know that, Jake said. Okay, Ryan said. Be there. No guards, no bodyguards, no weapons. Just you and me. Or are you too scared to face a real man alone? Maybe you'd rather hide behind your wife's skirts? You bastard, Jake growled. You got that right, Ryan said. Tell me, Jake, do your shareholders know about how you destroyed my family? Do they know about how you did that deal in the Middle East 3 years ago? Do they know that you sent a team over there to end the life of your wife's ex-husband? Do they know about your adventures and the illegitimate children you produced? Do they know about how you abuse your wife? You fucking asshole, Jake snarled. You don't dare put that out there. I'll sue you for slander. You're wrong, Jake, Ryan said. I have a dossier on you nearly 3 inches thick, and I know some reporters from the Wall Street Journal who wouldn't mind getting their hands on it. I think the SEC and DOJ guys might be interested too. So, what's it gonna be? Are you gonna meet with me one-on-one, or am I gonna make a phone call? What are you, Jake? A man? Or a mouse? Okay, asshole, Jake said. I'll meet you like you said. Good, Ryan said. And just so you know, if anything happens to me, my daughter, or Lisa, this dossier will be sent to 100 media outlets and more than a few federal agencies, not to mention your shareholders and board of directors, along with photos and video. Understood? I got it, Jake said, sighing. The call ended, and Ryan looked at Lisa, who was staring at him in shock. Are you serious about all this? She asked. Absolutely, Ryan said. You don't think I've just been twiddling my thumbs all these years, do you? I want to go with you, she said. I don't think that's a very good idea, he told her. I don't care, she said. I have a right to face him too. I take it you didn't know about all this? Asked Ryan. She shook her head. No, it wasn't, she said. Not all of it anyway. Do you really have proof of all this? Of course, Ryan said. One phone call and everything goes public. It wouldn't be good for business. What a bastard, she said quietly. Are you ready? Asked Ryan. She nodded her head and stood up, and we shook hands. After a few more weeks, it was determined that I could travel safely, and with the help of the local U.S. Embassy, I was able to arrange transportation home. I took my stuff out of storage, came here, bought this apartment, and here we are. Ryan looked at Bob as he finished his story. Damn, that sounds like something out of a movie, he said. Ryan chuckled. Look, it's getting late, Ryan said. Why don't you stay the night? What about Sarah? He asked. I'd like to get some sleep before I make a decision. We'll discuss it in the morning, Ryan said. They entered the house, and Bob looked around at the empty walls and the sparsely furnished room. It's like a cave in here, Bob said, and his voice echoed off the bare walls. It works for me, Ryan said. I don't need much. 4 walls and a roof to keep the elements out. You can sleep on the couch if you want. The bathroom's at the end of the hallway. Are you hungry? I'd eat something, Bob said. We don't have much, Ryan said. Mostly TV dinners. I don't cook anymore. All right, Bob said. What do you have? Salisbury steak, macaroni and cheese, hot dogs, Ryan says. I prefer them raw. Your choice. Macaroni and cheese is good, please, Bob said. Okay, Ryan said. Give me a minute to warm up the microwave. Feel free to turn on the TV. Maybe they're showing something good on there. Who knows? Bob turned on the TV while Ryan popped the food into the microwave. He came back with 2 plates and held one out to Bob. Don't you ever get lonely out here by yourself? Asked Bob. Ryan shook his head. No, he said. What about women? Asked Bob. Have you dated anyone since the divorce? No, Ryan said. Been there, done that. Gave Lisa 20 years of my life, and for what? Never again. If it gets really hard for me, I'll go into town and rent a woman for an hour or 2, if you know what I mean. Bob grinned. Trust me, son. At some point it will happen to you too. Sarah would never do to me what Lisa did to you, Bob said. I thought so once too, Ryan said. And what did it get me? It's in their genes, son. You better do what you can to protect yourself. You must really hate women, Bob said. No, Ryan said. Just one or two of them. The rest of them I trust as far as I can push them over the edge. What about your dream of having your own garage? Asked Bob. Gone to waste, just like my marriage, Ryan said. What are you dreaming of now? Asked Bob. Wake up, get through another day, Ryan said, though I fantasize about leaving Jake alone for about 5 minutes. Would you have done away with him? Asked Bob. I don't know, Ryan said. It would be very tempting, but I like the idea of seeing him agonize for the rest of his miserable life, constantly looking over his shoulder. They finished their meal in silence. Finally, Ryan got up and gathered the dishes. He took them into the kitchen and rinsed them, then put them in the dishwasher. Do you have a place to stay for the night? He asked, stepping out of the house. Not yet, Bob said. We should probably get settled in here then, Ryan said. He pulled a blanket and pillow from the hall closet and held them out to Bob. The couch is pretty comfortable. There's only one bed here, and that's the one I sleep on. Make yourself at home. I usually get up around 6. Good night. Good night, Bob said as he got ready for the night. He noticed that Ryan had the letters he'd given him the day before and wondered if he was going to read them. The next morning, Bob woke up to the smell of coffee and something unfamiliar. Ryan walked into the front room and handed him what looked like an egg burrito. Good morning, Ryan said. Hope you slept well last night. Have some breakfast. It's not very good, but it'll get you started. Thanks, Bob said, yawning. He took a bite of the burrito and put the leftovers back on his plate. Ryan was right. There wasn't much flavor, and the tortilla, cooked in the microwave, was already as hard as a brick. So, what do you have planned for the day? Asked Ryan. I'll fly in this morning, Bob said. I'll be glad to have you back with me. That's what I thought, Ryan said. I'm all packed and ready to go anytime. Bob looked over and saw a duffel bag next to the door. When's your flight? There's a flight leaving at 11 o'clock, Bob said. We'd better hit the road as soon as possible if you plan on coming back with me. If you don't mind me asking, why did you decide to do this? Sarah's letters, Ryan said. I read them last night. I think she realizes what she did was wrong. I could have told you that, Bob said. Maybe, Ryan said. But there's more coming from her. How well does she get along with her mother? Not very much, said Bob. She's polite and all, but she doesn't approve of what her mother did, and she's not shy about telling her about it. And she can't stand Jake. Ryan nodded his head. Well, I guess there is hope for her after all, Ryan said. Okay, we should get going. Ryan closed up the house, making sure everything was locked, and after Bob showered and dressed, they left. When they arrived at the airport, Bob turned in the rental car and paid for it. Then they headed to the ticket counter. While Ryan paid for his ticket, in cash, Bob made a phone call. They met up and got in line for the security check. Do you always carry a lot of cash? Bob asked quietly, so no one would hear. I prefer to pay for everything in cash, Ryan said. It allows me to not be overcharged, if you know what I mean. Ah, Bob said in reply. Well, just be careful. Don't worry, son, Ryan said. I've got your back. He smiled and winked at the younger man, who just shook his head. By the way, Dr. Fritz, Sarah's doctor, wants to see you as soon as we get to the hospital, Bob said. Is that who you were talking to earlier? Asked Ryan. Yes, Bob said. I also called Sarah and told her I was coming back. And no, I didn't mention you at all. I thought you might want to surprise her. Good man, Ryan said. Finally, they settled into their seats and the plane took off. By the time the plane reached cruising altitude, Ryan was asleep, his battered Stetson pulled low over his face. A couple hours later, the plane went into a descent, waking Ryan from his sleep. Soon the flight was over, and they exited the plane. Ryan followed Bob into the parking lot, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder. They reached Bob's car, a fairly new RAV4, and put their luggage in the back seat. They climbed into the car, and Bob drove to the hospital, while Ryan looked around the neighborhood. When they reached the hospital, Bob led Ryan inside and took him to Dr. Fritz's office where he introduced them to each other. Ryan shook the doctor's hand and sat down at his invitation. "I understand you are Sarah Green's father," Dr. Fritz said. "That's right," Ryan said. "Her mother told me you were dead," the doctor said. "Well, her source was wrong," Ryan said. "I see," Dr. Fritz said. "I take it Mr. Green told you about your daughter's condition." "Yes, it is," Ryan said. "And if there's anything I can do to help, I will." "I'm glad to hear that," Dr. Fritz said. "More than anything, Sarah needs a bone marrow transplant right now." "Will that cure her?" asked Ryan. "I believe she will," the doctor said. "I don't want to give false hope, but she won't survive without it." "What do I have to do?" asked Ryan. "We will need to draw your blood and run a series of tests to make sure it is safe and compatible," the doctor said. "Do whatever you need to do, Doc," Ryan said. "When will you know for sure?" "We'll take samples now and send them to the lab," Dr. Fritz said. "We'll know for sure by noon tomorrow." "Okay," Ryan said. "Let's finish this." Dr. Fritz smiled. He walked to the door of his office and called for a nurse. He gave her a few instructions and turned to Ryan. "Just follow Nurse Black," he said. "She'll take you to that room over there and draw some blood. Check in with me around this time tomorrow." "Can I see my daughter when we're done?" asked Ryan. "Of course," Dr. Fritz said. "I'm sure her husband already knows the way." "It was nice to meet you, Mr. Caldwell. We'll talk tomorrow." They shook hands once more, and the doctor left to see another patient. Ryan followed the nurse into a small room and watched her prepare the ampoules. He hated needles and looked away while she prepared everything. "All right, Mr. Caldwell," she said, wiping his hand with an alcohol swab. "Just a little poke, and you're all set." Ryan closed his eyes and was surprised that it didn't hurt as much as he thought it would. "That's it," she said with a smile. "That wasn't so bad, was it?" she asked, putting a colorful Band-Aid on his arm. "No, it wasn't," he said. "Okay," she said. "We'll take this to the lab, and we'll have the results tomorrow. I'll see you then." After she left, he buttoned up his shirt sleeve and walked out to meet Bob. "Are you ready to go to Sarah's?" asked Bob. Ryan nodded his head. "Yes," he said nervously. "Let's go do it." He followed Bob, wondering how anyone could work here and not get lost. The place was like a maze. Corridors and hallways went off in different directions. They reached the elevator and took it up to the 6th floor. Once out of it, they walked down a few more corridors until they reached Sarah's room. Bob knocked on the door and looked inside. He asked Ryan to stay outside for a moment. Ryan heard his daughter's voice from inside the room. "Hi, honey," she said weakly. "I've got a surprise for you," Bob said. "Oh, how nice," she said. "You know I love surprises." Bob invited Ryan into the house. He walked into the room and saw his daughter for the first time in 10 years. She was still very beautiful, though her skin was pale and a little blotchy. When she saw him, her eyes widened and her mouth opened in surprise. "Daddy?" she asked, reminding him of when she was little. A tear appeared in the corner of his eye as he looked at her. "Is it really you?" she asked. "It's me, Princess," he said, calling her by the nickname he used when she was little. When he stepped toward her, she raised her arms to embrace him, tears streaming down her face. "I thought you were dead," she cried, hugging him tightly. "Rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated," he said in a vain attempt at a joke. "What happened to you?" she asked. "Oh, you mean this?" asked Ryan, pointing to the patch over his eye. "Yes," she said. "Workplace accident," he said. "I traveled abroad a lot after you and Mom left." "What were you doing?" she asked. "I was what you might call a private security consultant," he says. "Sometimes things got a little, well, awkward." "Have you ever started your garage?" she asked. Ryan shook his head. "No, never," he said. "After your mother left me the way she did, I lost the urge to start a garage." "Oh, Daddy, I'm so sorry," she said. "I feel so bad that it happened." "I know," Ryan said. "I read your letters." Is that why they kept coming back? She asked. Yes, he said. I sold the house and got rid of everything after you left. Didn't see any reason to keep it. Why didn't you ever write to me? She asked. Well, I got the impression from the way you left that you didn't want to see or hear from me, Ryan told her. Besides, I didn't have your address. I'm really sorry about what happened, she said. I fell for all of Jake's bullshit, just like Mom did. Can you ever forgive me? I already did, Princess, Ryan said, causing her to sob uncontrollably as he wrapped his arms around her. It's okay, sweetheart, he whispered, wrapping his arms around her and stroking her hair. Daddy's here. It's going to be okay. A few minutes later, she lay back on the bed in exhaustion. Did Bob tell you what's going on? She asked. Yes, it is, Ryan said. I've already talked to Dr. Fritz. They took some blood and are testing it for compatibility. If compatible, I'll donate bone marrow for you. When will you know for sure? She asked. Tomorrow, Ryan said. Thank you, she said. I can never repay you for that. That won't be necessary, Ryan said. Just get well, okay? And take care of my grandson. She smiled weakly and nodded her head. I will, she said, and turned to Bob. Thanks for finding my daddy, she told him. He smiled and hugged her while she cried some more. You're welcome, he said. I told you I would, didn't I? Yes, it is, she replied. They heard the door open and turned to see who had entered. Even though it had been over 10 years, Ryan recognized the woman standing there, Lisa. She was still in good shape and quite attractive, but he noticed that her facial features had become harder and more defined than before. Ryan? She asked. Is that you? I thought you... dead? He asked, finishing her sentence. Yes, she said. That's what Jake told me. Well, I'm actually alive. And no thanks to you, Ryan said, making her wince. Your husband did the best he could, but he missed. What do you mean? She asked, shocked. Come on, Lisa, Ryan said. You know, of course, that he's the one who sent those men to take me out in the Middle East. Decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but he screwed up and missed. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. Bullshit, Ryan said. Can we talk somewhere private? She asked. Ryan looked at Sarah and Bob before answering. Sure, he said, standing up. He walked over to the nurse and asked if she had a private room they could occupy for a few minutes. Sure, the nurse said, pointing to a small meeting room. Just put this on the door before you close it, she added, handing him a sign that read, Used. Thank you, Ryan said, taking the sign. They walked to the room, and Lisa sat down while Ryan hung the sign on the door. He closed and locked it, then sat down. Okay, Ryan, Lisa began. What's going on? Why are you here? You're an intelligent woman, he said. Surely you can figure this matter out. Your son-in-law found me and informed me that Sarah needs a bone marrow transplant. She's still my daughter, despite everything you and Jake have done to keep us apart, and I'm willing to help her in any way I can. How much do you want? Asked Lisa. What? Asked Ryan, shocked. You heard me, she said. How much do you want for your bone marrow? After all, that's why you're here, isn't it? Your garage isn't working and you obviously need money, so you came here to see what you can get from me. First of all, stupid, Ryan said, putting an emphasis on the word stupid that made Lisa recoil. I don't want your stinking blood money. Secondly, our daughter is in that room over there fighting for her life. So you can get off your damn horse. So you think in 10 years you can just come here and be Father of the Year? She asked wryly. Okay, I'm not perfect, Ryan said, but I'm not the one who cheated on you. It was the other way around. I wasn't the one who offered you a divorce without giving you a moment's notice. I wasn't the one who plotted and schemed to destroy our family. It was you. You cheated on me. And for what? For money. And what does that get you? Last time I looked, it fit the definition of a girl of easy virtue, so don't get all high and mighty on me. So what do you want? She asked. Really? I want my daughter to get better, he said. But surely there must be something else, she said in reply. While you're on the subject, I'd like to get something, Ryan said. What's that? Said Lisa. 5 minutes alone with my husband, he said. For what? She asked. So you can hit him? That's it? You couldn't stand up to him when I left you for him, so now you want to face him on the playground? I was actually thinking about that nice dark alley between 3rd and 4th Streets by Riverside, Ryan said. You can't be serious, she said. I'm serious, he told her. Do you think my husband, a rich, powerful man with $1 billion fortune, a man powerful enough to get people elected to office, has time to meet you in an alley? She asked. You're out of your mind. Fine, he said, standing up. I guess you really don't care about your daughter getting better. Maybe I'd better go home. Wait a minute, she said. You're really serious about this? Yes, he said. 5 minutes. No weapons, no guards, no bodyguards. Just him and me, one-on-one. He owes me £1, and I intend to get it one way or another. He knows karate, Lisa said. He can stand up for himself. Good, Ryan said. He needs to know how to defend himself. Tell me, is he using you as his personal punching bag? What does that mean? She asked. I see the edge of a bruise on your collar, he said. I also noticed a bruise on your arm. How long has he been abusing you? She lowered her sleeve and looked away for a moment. It was an accident, she said nervously. I was clumsy and tripped. Ryan chuckled. Bullshit, he said. I know he bullied you. Hell, as far as I can tell, everyone knows. Bob knows, which means Sarah knows too. Why are you staying with him? Is it the money? That's it, isn't it? That's all you've ever cared about. Look, Jake is under a lot of stress, she said. Sometimes he does things but doesn't really mean anything. Ryan shook his head. I don't believe a word you say, he told her. Why don't you get your cell phone and call him right now? Are you serious? She asked. You really want to meet him in a dark alley to punch him? I plan on not just hitting him, but yeah, Ryan said. When do you want to do it? She asked. Right now, Ryan said. She looked at him, shocked. Who is this man? She wondered. She pulled her cell phone out of her purse. Put it on speaker, Ryan said. She nodded her head, pressed the speed dial button, and put it on speakerphone. What's up? Asked Jake, picking up the phone. Hi, baby, Lisa said. There's a man in town who's visiting Sarah in the hospital, and he wants to see you right now. Oh? Asked Jake. Who's that? It's Ryan, she said. Ryan? Asked Jake. Your ex? That Ryan? Yes, Lisa said. He insists on seeing you right now. Says he only needs 5 minutes. Well, I'm not sure I can leave right now, Jake said. I have a shareholders meeting this afternoon, and I have a lot to discuss. Listen to me, you little jerk, Ryan said. I have business with you, and I want to meet with you right now. Where? Asked Jake. In the alley between 3rd and 4th near Riverside, Jake said. Do you know the neighborhood? Yeah, I know that, Jake said. Okay, Ryan said. Be there. No guards, no bodyguards, no weapons, just you and me. Or are you too scared to face a real man alone? Maybe you'd rather hide behind your wife's skirts? You bastard, Jake growled. You got that right, Ryan said. Tell me, Jake, do your shareholders know about how you destroyed my family? Do they know about how you did that deal in the Middle East 3 years ago? Do they know that you sent a team over there to end the life of your wife's ex-husband? Do they know about your adventures and the illegitimate children you produced? Do they know about how you abuse your wife? You fucking asshole, Jake snarled. You don't dare put that out there. I'll sue you for slander. You're wrong, Jake, Ryan said. I have a dossier on you nearly 3 inches thick, and I know some reporters from the Wall Street Journal who wouldn't mind getting their hands on it. I think the SEC and DOJ guys might be interested too. So what's it gonna be? Are you gonna meet with me one-on-one? Or am I gonna make a phone call? What are you, Jake? A man? Or a mouse? Okay, asshole, Jake said. I'll meet you like you said. Good, Ryan said. And just so you know, if anything happens to me, my daughter, or Lisa, this dossier will be sent to 100 media outlets and more than a few federal agencies, not to mention your shareholders and board of directors, along with photos and video. Understood? I got it, Jake said, sighing. The call ended, and Ryan looked at Lisa, who was staring at him in shock. "Are you serious about all this?" she asked. "Absolutely," Ryan said. "You don't think I've just been twiddling my thumbs all these years, do you?" "I want to go with you," she said. "I don't think that's a very good idea," he told her. "I don't care," she said. "I have a right to face him too." "I take it you didn't know about all this?" asked Ryan. She shook her head. "No, it wasn't," she said. "Not all of it, anyway. Do you really have proof of all this?" "Of course," Ryan said. "One phone call and everything goes public. It wouldn't be good for business." "What a bastard," she said quietly. "Are you ready?" asked Ryan. She nodded her head and stood up. Here we come to the end of the first part of this exciting story. We witnessed the dramatic reunion of a father and daughter separated by tragic circumstances. It seemed that their paths had diverged forever, but fate decided otherwise. Ryan's life was full of trials, war, loss of family, loneliness. All this tempered his character, turning him into a withdrawn and alienated person. But even in his heart, a spark of hope continued to smolder, which eventually led him to this fateful meeting. Sarah's story is no less tragic. Betrayal of her mother, loss of her father, serious illness. All this fell on her fragile shoulders. However, despite all the trials, she retained faith and hope for the best. And now, when it seemed that everything was lost, a chance for salvation appeared. In the next part, we will find even more emotions and unexpected turns. And so that YouTube can recommend it to you, and you definitely do not miss it, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and you can already find the full version in our exclusive community on Patreon. Don't miss the sequel.